Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and I am so excited to bring back a guest who's been on the show twice before. This is her third time, and we never run out of things to say. She is a fascinating young lady, so I would like to welcome Ashley Zimmerman back to the show.
Hey
Ashley.
Guys.
And you are the owner, the founder, and the owner of your own private physical therapy practice.
Yeah, so I have an independent contracting business for physical therapy.
And
yes.
The name of the company?
Name is Your Strength Within.
And you have been on the show, like I said, twice before. So for people who are listening to this episode and haven't heard Ashley's interviews yet, you want to go to episode number 34, and the title is Discover Your Strength Within. And episode 35, The Body Freedom Project. There is so much information in both of these episodes, especially number 34 focuses on the health of your pelvis and your pelvic floor. And number 35 actually has to do with the horrors of human trafficking. And Ashley spent, how long were you there?
I was there a week, yeah.
And just tell us a little bit about that.
I was in Costa Rica working with a group that is aiming to end human trafficking in that area. Mm-hmm. We were working on the streets with the women as well as the children who unfortunately are victims of this.
So it is a powerful episode, and I really encourage everybody to listen to that one and hear and discover what you can do to help stop this horrible, horrible practice. Okay, so we're just going to move on and find out what you have been up to, because I stalk you pretty much on social media. And I noticed sometime this fall, it was like, wow, Ashley's really on the move and doing a whole lot of stuff. And we're posting some posts that were very educational and informational and maybe even a little bit personal.
Yeah, some of them have been pretty vulnerable, and some of them I've been like, do I hit the post button? And I kind of sit there and then I like say no and walk away. And then I'm like, okay, what are you doing? Like, post it.
Way to step into your courage, because what you're talking about can help a lot of women and a lot of teenagers, a lot of teenage girls. And guys, I'm just going to give you a little bit of a warning or a heads up here. We're going to be talking about menstrual cycles. So if you want to, turn off now, you can. But if you do have any women or daughters or anybody in your life that you really care about, it might give you a little bit more insight to what we go through sometimes. And it's not to complain, it's just to educate yourself and understand why sometimes we just turn into crazy people.
It's interesting that you gave that warning, because I've actually had multiple men comment to me personally, like, you have given me so much insight and you have literally changed my view of all of this. And it's like, one guy even said, he's like, you're giving me inside information and now I feel like I have so much more power and I can help my wife so much.
Oh, yeah. That's just so it's beautiful.
Like, I know, it's really awesome.
That is so awesome. Well,
they just don't know.
Well, think of it even from our standpoint, and we were talking before the recording about, when we started getting our periods and what was happening to us and stuff, and how confusing and frightening sometimes it is for us. I can't imagine what it might be for a man trying to understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
So anyway, tell us how this whole thing came about when you decided to just put it out there. Yeah. So guys, keep listening.
So I just decided, I get so many questions on how did you end up in the world you work in. And so I'm a pelvic health physical therapist. I'm a doula and a Pilates instructor. So I'm
Explain what a doula is, because
Okay.
I heard that term just this past week for the first time.
Okay.
Ever.
So a doula is, so I'm trained for birth and postpartum. So a doula is basically like an advocate for the mom and the partner, whoever that is, as they go through this transition into motherhood. So a birth doula is actually present at the labor and the birth to help whoever mama is and their partner go through that process. And go ahead.
In the hospital, or
in the hospital, home, wherever they are.
Okay.
Wherever, or birth center, wherever they're giving birth. So it's interesting because it's helpful, like I said, for the partner. And this is one thing that most people, they're surprised when they hear it maybe, is, sometimes the partner needs a break because they're there to make sure that whoever is giving birth and the baby live. They don't know all of the answers, and they're not supposed to. And so having somebody there to be like the interface between the people going through the process and the medical staff, it's a buffer. And so not everything, there tends to be a lot of like hustle and bustle, right? And so it's a, hey, can we just like have 5 minutes? They want to talk about what they would like to do next, and then you guys can come back in and we can move on from there.
I have got to give kudos to the medical community for being that open and accepting to that, because I think that's just a terrific way of being able to take some of the fear and the tension and the trauma of the birthing process, which I'm sure, I don't have kids. I'm sure it's very beautiful, but on the other hand, I know what it's like from the clinical aspect of working in a hospital for so many years.
It wasn't a really easy thing for a lot of medical professionals to offer.
I'm sure.
And there still is some struggle. There's still a lot of struggle, which is super unfortunate. But I, give kudos to all of the moms out there who just refuse to stop letting birth become a medical process instead of a beautiful natural. So that's what a doula is. And so people always wonder why I got into this. And for a while, I don't know that I really knew. It was just kind of one of those situations that it was like, oh, all of a sudden you end up here, but there's a reason why you end up where you are. And I just decided to really figure out what that was. And if we go all the way back to the time I was 13 was when I can trace it back and vividly remember feeling inadequate as a female, like specifically as a female. And so I started writing about it, and I started using that to like write my story, like figure out what the heck am I doing here? Like, why did I end up in this place instead of, I don't know, somewhere else? I thought initially I was going to be a pediatric physical therapist, and I'm, I guess, not too far from that when I deal with like pregnant mamas and postpartum, but I have nothing to do with that world. And I love what I do now. I'm super passionate about it. So I just started going through that journey and realizing along the way all of these things that happened that molded me into like this type of work that I wasn't even realizing at the time. And there's no way I would have known when I was 13 or 15 or 19, that this is where I was going to end up. But it was framing everything within me, all the cells in my body, that this was the work that I was supposed to do. And so it's been fascinating. I
love the way you put all the cells in your body.
Yeah.
Because it's like, people think of like their core, where that's, but it is every single cell in your body is communicating to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things we struggle with, females tend to struggle with, especially, we went through feminine energy. If you think of, like, if you were to write down all the words that describe femininity, they're probably going to be pretty positive. But if you write down words to describe being a woman, you're going to have some negative words on there. That's what I found anyways. So maybe not everybody is like that. But people who do that exercise, there's some negative things that come up with what being a woman means. And it's different for everybody. And so we've gone through this where females played this very feminine role. And then it was like we came up to a brick wall because we were so fed up, and then we decided that we weren't going to be feminine anymore. We were going to be masculine, and we were going to do all of the masculine things because that's what men do, and we wanted equality. But what that does is it takes us away from knowing, in a lot of cases, this isn't to say that everybody, that this isn't to be a 100% true for everyone, but what happens in a lot of cases is then we take away our true self, and we forget that our womb is where our creativity comes from, regardless of if you have kids or not. And so we decided to just totally become this masculine woman and forget that we are still a woman and the femininity is part of us.
Once again, no wonder why you guys are confused. We understand.
Yeah. So, it was interesting. I feel like the whole last year of like my life and what I've been doing, that's been like guiding me behind it, is like realizing why I'm here, where I'm coming from, and how do I then translate that over into like the people that I'm trying to help. Because I don't believe in like, what I don't want is us to go backwards, which I think, well, we'll leave that out of it. There's some current things going on that maybe are trying to take women a little bit backwards. We don't want to go backwards, but what I do think we need to do is own our own power and step into our own power as being female and everything that entails.
Amen.
While we are still progressing towards equality, because I don't think we're there yet.
So now you've came upon this epiphany kind of when you were 13.
Yeah.
And tell us what 13-year-old Ashley was doing at that point in her life.
So 13-year-old me, isn't that funny? So 13-year-old me, middle school, tough time for I think everyone. Sports played a huge role in what I was doing. And then of course I was in school. I was always, I did pretty good in school. It was just fine. School was fine. I never was somebody who thought like, oh my gosh, I hate school. I dreaded going to school every single day. But it's not like I also was getting up and being like, I love school. I was kind of one of those kids who I didn't have, thankfully, clinical depression, which is awesome. I'm so blessed to be able to say that. But I also don't think that I was totally okay. And I think that that's where like that, when you get that feeling of inadequacy, which happens to 100% of females at some point in their life, it either sticks with you or you can get rid of it, and I didn't get rid of it. I didn't know how. I didn't even know what that meant.
But you recognized that you had something either like bothering you or that you weren't completely happy or that maybe you were different from the other girls.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So,
and you never expressed that to your mom or anybody else.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't even know that I ever like expressed it to like friends. I don't know that because I was always outwardly so happy. So and that continued into my adult life. Everyone was like, well, Ashley's always having fun and so happy and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, then I would go home and be like, oh, well, that sucks, And so I felt like I just kind of slipped through the cracks because I was outwardly a happy kid. But I wish that there would have been a little bit more information out there about how to guide somebody through that, instead of, because again, when you're clinically depressed, there's very real signs of what's going on. And there's so much help for that, which thank goodness, we're starting to appreciate mental health a little bit more. I think we have a long ways to go, but there's so many girls who they don't have, because all of the systems in place were designed off of males. And so like going back to sports, everything I did was designed off of research done on a male body.
So it was the male model.
Correct. Yeah. So one of the simplest ways to think of this for anybody who has like teenagers, male or female, actually anybody, a male cycles through his hormones daily, right? So they peak every afternoon. That's when that's when they should be working out because their testosterone peaks and they can, max out. A female's hormone cycles every 30-ish days. And so why we're expected to perform the same way as a male just based on that information makes zero sense. And understanding it from that age is huge if we're really trying to impact how we're raising our girls. Does that make,
It makes total sense. Yeah. It's not just how to raise them, but even how to train them as athletes as well, to be able to have them perform at their best, but still take care of their physical health.
Exactly.
Which, as women, we are different.
Exactly. And there's days, I can remember being in basketball practice and literally feeling like I'd never played basketball before. Being like, what? Yeah. I probably didn't make a single layup in practice. Probably made my teammates have to run a lot because I wasn't like on my game. But it's probably when I was on my period.
Right.
There's a very real reason why we have good days and bad days. The goal is not to have so many bad days, but if we just understood how to train during the different parts of our cycle, we'd have so many better outcomes.
I have a dance teacher right now that I study with. I've been studying with her for about 5 years, and the woman's amazing. She's just has so many different trainings under her belt, including she's a Jungian psychologist and a cranial sacral therapist. The woman is amazing, and she actually does talk about that, with her students, is you're not going to be able to do the things when you're getting your period that you are when you're not. It's the hormones and the changes are really affecting the inner thigh muscles, your pelvic floor muscles, and to push through it.
Yeah.
And to really force yourself to do the things that you think you should be able to do every day is setting you up for a lot of injury, including tearing your pelvic floor muscles.
Sure.
And then jeopardizing your ability to bear children in the future. So, it's just so amazing that somebody is able to share this information and, it's out there. So, again, thank you for being here and making it, making that point.
So just like a really, really quick review, because if we were to talk about cycle education, it's like, it's much more in depth than this. But what I found is a lot of people don't even know how to track their cycle or what their cycle really means. So day 1 of your cycle is the first day of your period. Your period should ideally last 4 to 5 days. It can last up to 7. Optimal function or efficiency is 4 to 5 days. That's when you're shedding the uterine lining. That's where the blood comes from. Then you move into the follicular phase. So this is when estrogen is being produced to prepare for ovulation. Ovulation then occurs about 14 days. This is very general because everybody is different. Ovulation then occurs, which is when the egg is released and you prepare for possible pregnancy. That last phase from ovulation to the start of your period, that's your luteal phase. That's when everything is being prepared for that possible implantation. And then you start all over. Okay, so that whole cycle, about 28 days. Again, it's different for everybody, but think of 28 as like the average, you could say. So where you should be kind of at like the peak of your training is working up to ovulation, because that's when you're going to have the most energy. When you're on your period is when you should be focused more on. So it doesn't mean that training just stops. That's not what this is about. But that means during those 4 to 5 days, that's when you're focused more on mobility. That's when you're focused more on like honing in on very specific, tinier movements that then transfer into more of like the big dynamic movements that you do in sport, right? So you just kind of scale everything back, work on mobility, stretching, release work, fine-tuning smaller movements to prepare for then like the big stuff later during your cycle.
So the micro movements. And I love thinking about that because, as you know, I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner and we love micro movements and the ability to slow yourself down and really pay attention to your body and to your movement patterns. It's almost like a gift. And that is where you can have a tremendous amount of growth and change in your technique and in your performance. So I'm glad that you brought that up because I think a lot of women or girls don't want to stop training during that time because they think that they're going to lose technique, they're going to lose strength or whatever. But that's actually a time when you're more vulnerable to injury.
It can be, yeah. It's a lot of times when I'm working with somebody and we're talking about those smaller movements, they're not like the big fancy stuff, right? So they're small. They're not, it's not as satisfying. It's not the time where you're going to go out and get like the best sweat in, You can't, of course, you can go out and get a sweat in, right? But it's just not when you should be pushing yourself to the max. If you're trying to like really honor where your body is at.
So I just want to say something else that might be a source of comfort for some of those women out there going, oh no, I have to train through it, is when you're concentrating on those micro movements, you're actually changing the pathways in your brain. And this is an incredible opportunity for you to be able to develop as an athlete or a performer or whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Yep, absolutely. Think of it as like the foundation of your house. You don't want to skimp on that. But if you're skimping on it and always going for the big, you're going to miss the smaller stuff underneath.
Yeah, I always tell people it's like building a house. If you don't have that structure, that foundational structure, you start putting bricks and mortar and all the weight on top, the structure is absolutely going to collapse. And then you're looking at not only an injury, but a lot of trouble down the road too as you mature.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say get older.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So in watching you, stalking you on Facebook and social media, you're doing a lot of posts that are teaching people how to identify when they are ovulating. And so you want to explain how to do that?
So there are different ways out there. My favorite way is to use your basal body temperature, which is your basal body temperature is your temperature at rest. So the best time to do this is immediately in the morning when you wake up, because you need about 3 hours of consistent sleep to really have a true reading. And so with our world of technology, you can literally buy one of these on Amazon for $20 or less. And you put an app on your phone and you just input the information into your phone. So you can see your temperature change. Now, it's not like it changes 10 degrees, right?
I would hope not.
But you get a small little spike when you're ovulating. So then you know exactly when you're ovulating. And then you see it kind of trickle back down when you're not. And then the few days where you're fertile, it spikes back up. And so it plots it on this nice, beautiful graph for you. And then...
if you are trying to get pregnant, this is a wonderful tool to have.
Exactly.
And if you're trying to avoid pregnancy, that's another really good tool to have.
And the apps are so awesome. So of course, you have to get a few months in there to really know exactly, because your first month, it's the first information that's being input in. So it's going to try to predict when your next ovulation is going to come. But of course, after you have a few months in there, that's when you're really going to have the best bet of that it's accurate. But you're fertile for a few days before and a few days after you ovulate. So it shows you that. It's all out there for you. You just have to input the information.
So to get one of those thermometers, just go on Amazon. And what exactly are you looking for?
Just type in basal body thermometer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you work with women and help coach them through this, or?
So it often comes up in our sessions. Yes. Yeah. So, it's interesting because a lot of times people they're coming in for pelvic floor therapy. They already know it's going to be something with their pelvic floor. But a lot of times they don't totally know what they're in for. So I always ask the questions in the beginning, and then I leave it up to them for what they want to, say back to me. It always comes up at some point.
Are they ever surprised that you are as knowledgeable as you are in this area? Because I would imagine they don't even get this kind of information from their GYN.
That's what they always ask me is, why didn't my doctor tell me about this? And it's just our system, I guess. It's unfortunate. And they don't have the background in it, and that's okay as long as they're giving you then somebody who has those resources. It's when they don't have anybody who has those resources that's when we're really doing women a disservice. So I'm willing to talk about periods all day.
You are amazing. And this is why I love you so much, is when you were here the last time, or I think it was the first time, you said, I can talk about the pelvic floor and the pelvic floor muscles all day long. Some people don't like to talk about their pelvic floors, but I'll talk about it all day long. So now, Ashley, you're just something. And you'll talk about periods all day long, too.
Yeah,
But, somebody has to.
Exactly. And I think, part of what, I didn't know anything about my period. And this is another reason why, I have been sharing about it, is because I was put on birth control as a Band-Aid.
At the age of?
At the age of 15, as a Band-Aid, because I went from having, barely a period. You can call it a period, but it was barely nothing, to having to change a tampon, the super tampon every hour. And how are you supposed to go to school like that? And feeling getting sick, actually getting sick. You can't really do life like that. So I was put on the pill, which happens a lot. We're put on the pill to regulate instead of actually finding out what's going on, which can usually be fixed. Of course, there are instances where the pill is an awesome tool that we have. And if you're using the birth control pill to prevent pregnancy, great. But if the pill is being used as a Band-Aid, it's super frustrating, because all you're doing is creating a problem for yourself after you want to get off the pill to have a baby, because those symptoms aren't going to go away. They're just masked until you get off of it. And I can remember in college, I think probably 3 or 4 times I tried to get off of the pill without any support. I just was I knew in my body that it wasn't right. I knew I felt weird. So I was I'm done. Just cold turkey off of the pill. And I remember one time, my first period after that, literally, I thought I was dying. And I was 3 hours away from home, but of course I called my mom.
Of course.
And I'm like, Mom, what's going on? Because, you know, this is a lot of blood. Like, a lot of blood. Like,
am I dying?
I think I might die. Yeah. So, you know, love ya. And so what does she do? She tells me to call the doctor. Good advice. Should be good advice, right? Duh. Like, don't call your mom who's 3 hours away. Call the doctor. So I called the doctor. They said, well, if it continues, come in. And what they said was they were going to do a DNC, which means they're going to go in and scrape everything and clean it out. Never once did they say, let's find out what's going on. So I went back on the pill. And then a few years later, I tried to get off of the pill again. And same thing happened. So I got back on the pill. And then it was like I was always searching to find the right kind of pill that wouldn't make me feel weird. And that's the only way I know how to describe it, because I described it as I felt like I was going crazy at one of my doctor's visits, and then they were like, oh my gosh, do we need to commit you? Like, are you like suicidal? And I was like, oh, okay, yep. No, but something isn't right. And then I was like, okay, fine, we'll try this one. Literally, I like succumbed to the pressure. And then I felt like crap when I walked out of the office, because I was like, this isn't the outcome I wanted, but nobody will like talk to me. Nobody will listen to me.
Well, yeah. And that was kind of one of my questions for you too, because like the conversation we were having earlier, and that happened to me so many times. I mean, I never said I felt like I was going crazy, but it was like, why am I having so much pain? Why am I bleeding like this? And it's like, well, you need some psychological help. And then I was told that I was drug seeking and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, by the time I had had several minor surgeries so they could quote unquote figure it out. And of course they never did until I was 47. And it was like, you know what? I'm done. Mm-hmm. I'm not dying. I don't have cancer. I can deal with the pain and the discomfort and the mess a lot easier than I can deal with you people telling me I'm crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time that's what women will tell me, is that they haven't been listened to. And not, you know, this isn't like, none of this is to say that it like, because the doctors, they have 60 people on their schedule every day.
Right.
They can't spend more than 10 minutes with you. You know, should they? Yes, but they literally can't. Mm-hmm. But they will tell me that they haven't been heard, that they haven't been listened to, that they've been told it's in their head, that because they've had babies, they have to live with it, that because they're getting older, they have to live with it, and it's just a natural process. And it's just not true. None of that is true. And that's like it's heartbreaking that that's what we're telling women, but they're literally told this every single day, so of course they're going to believe it. And so, you know, what I did to truly start to heal my cycle was nutrition is a huge part of it. And you're never going to get around that. Nutrition is what feeds your hormones. And if you don't have your gut balanced, and if you aren't getting the proper nutrients, there's no way your hormones are going to know what to do. They're not going to be able to be produced, or that you're going to produce too much, or like whatever is going on, it's different for everyone. If nutrition isn't a piece of your healing, you're going to miss something. Nutrition was a huge piece of it, acupuncture, and a lot of like my own form of like writing therapy, really. Yeah.
Like journaling. There's an incredible healing power in the written word. And when you're writing things down and not really even paying attention to how I'm going to say it, but you just write it down and you go back and look at it later, it's like, wow. And as far as the nutrition, did you do the research for yourself, or did you seek help?
Yeah. So her name is Stephanie Rome. She's of The Keenest is her nutrition name. So that's who I sought help from.
What I really wanted to ask you was, when did that light bulb go off? When was the moment that you realized that you had to heal yourself from within?
Okay. So that's a really good question. So if I were to go back, because like I said, I can trace back to when I was 13, right? Is when I realized that like all of those feelings started. And then a couple years later is when I got my period, right? So there's a little bit of time lapse there. But the light bulb should have went off when I was 15. But what 15-year-old is going to know that, you know? Right. And with the information that's out there, what mom is going to know that too, you know? Unless you're like inundated with this information like I have been, or I've like thrown myself into it. You just don't know, because it's not common knowledge. And it's not put out there for people to get in an accessible way. So you just don't know. And you you can only do better if you know better, you know?
And it's funny because if you do tell your mom and your mom is trying to coach you through this, you know, in the same way that her mother did or did not or whatever.
Right.
So we're being given information and the same type of advice that women have been receiving for centuries, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I was 28 is when I was off of birth control for a pretty, I don't know, maybe it was like 6 months, but I got back on it because I failed because I didn't have the support around me. I tried to do it myself. Oh. So I like lasted 6 months and then I was like, whoa, whatever. I'm getting it back. Let's do it. I'm going to be on it forever. When I get off of it, I better hurry up and get pregnant because like that's not a way to live.
I screwed my body up so much.
I was like, this is it. Like, you know, and on top of that, super frustrating too. On top of that, I was told twice now, it hasn't been for a while, but twice now that I would have difficulty having children. They had nothing, now I know, but they had no backup on that. They had no reason to tell me that other than scare tactic. I mean, a lot of it is scare tactic. The females in my age range have the highest rates of infertility that we've ever seen.
Wow.
And we're also the generation that grew up on birth control. Hello, like it's not a surprise, you know, and it's super unfortunate. And if we just were willing to talk about it and willing to work on it, it wasn't easy, you know, it was not easy getting off of birth control. And the only time I was successful was when I realized that I needed help around me. And it's not, you know, then it becomes like this circle of like women truly empowering women, because now I look at my period as like my monthly report card. I can tell if I've had too many donuts that month. Like, and sometimes that happens. And sometimes I just have to be okay with that because
sometimes donuts. You just need the donut.
But I can tell if I've listened to my body, and I can tell if I've kind of like threw some things under the rug that I thought I could get away with. You know what I mean? So and that's really awesome to know your body that well.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, that is so empowering
in itself. It's so freeing.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Well, I told you I went to speech therapy for the first time. 63 years old, and I have to go to a speech therapist. But when I walked in there, and I told her exactly what the problem was, and she just looked and said, "Oh my gosh, you're so much fun." And I thought, well, I'm not really having that much fun, but okay. And she said, it takes me an entire session to explain to people when they come in what's going on and how to pay attention. She says, but you've got so much body awareness that, you know, you came and told me.
Yeah.
And that is so empowering when you go to another practitioner, whether it's a therapist of some sort or acupuncturist, or a physician, and you walk in and you say, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
This is what I'm feeling in my body. And you have the power behind it. So you have the authority to be your own expert rather than handing your authority and your personal power over to somebody else who does not care about you as much as you care about yourself. And yet they can't. I mean, I don't care how good they are. They don't have the time.
There's a quote, and I feel bad I don't remember who it's from. This is not my quote, but it says, a true healer doesn't heal you, you heal yourself. A true healer provides the space for you to heal yourself. Something along those lines. Right. And I think that that's where we get mixed up, is we view the medical system as the end all be all. They're there to, if we're using the medical system correctly, they're there to support us.
Right.
But the only person who can heal you is you. And we just need people around us to hold space for that.
And I think that might be overwhelming for a lot of people because it really does take an incredible amount of commitment and desire and work to be able to tune into your body that much and to, you know, improve your awareness and do the research and write things down. That's why you have to have a good support system around you, helping you. But some people would just rather say, I'm going to go to the doctor and get a pill. And, you know, that might be their choice, and that's okay. But I think even a lot of the physicians that I go to now, you know, we have this understanding. I come in with this is what's going on. I want you to rule out the really bad stuff.
Yeah.
And then what do you think? And then I'll go out with what you say and, you know, kind of make my own decisions on it.
Yeah.
But that's the way you get really good care.
Yeah.
Is by being very proactive and doing your own research for yourself.
Yeah. And knowing that no one is going to advocate for you except for you, and that it's okay to advocate for yourself. Like you have every right to walk out of that office and say, okay, I'm going to let you know what I want to do next. Like you don't have to do everything that they say right then and there. Of course, life-threatening, this isn't to say that any of that stuff,
Right.
if something really bad is going on, you got to do that. But if you're not comfortable with the plan, it's literally okay to say so, like it's okay.
I think a lot of people are intimidated, and it's like, oh, well, if the doctor says so, I'm going to do it. But I think, well, at least the people that I work with, or my healthcare providers, they really respect the fact that I'm thoughtful about what I want to do for myself.
Right.
Because we're all different, and what we want out of the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And if you make a bad decision, a lot of times there's no do-over.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, do you teach people like in a large scale? Do you teach large audiences? Do you have workshops? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I do have a pelvic floor workshop that I teach. I'm currently working on figuring out if I'm going to combine it or keep it separate, like a cycle education workshop. There'll be a little bit of overlap in both of those because there kind of has to be, in my opinion. So those can be at request. I don't have any on the schedule right now.
Okay.
But they can be at request. So you can just contact me and be like, hey, I have a group of 6 women. Do you want to come over to my house? Like, let's have a wine and pelvic floor night.
I'm sorry. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we can totally do that.
And there was something else. Oh gosh, I wanted to talk to you about. I can't remember what it is right now, so I guess we'd have to just have you back.
Yeah,
another
let's do
time.
It. Yeah.
So give us your contact information.
Okay.
It is going to be on the episode as well, so people will be able to see that. But I just think that you're doing something that is so very important. And, to be able to reach a lot more women, and, you can really help the next generation of girls coming up, that they can have a much better quality of life.
So adolescence is something that I'm very passionate about. Just going back again to the time when I was 13, wishing I just would have had someone there to guide me through. So I actually, me and another girl, Sarah, we have developed a program for adolescent females that includes psychoeducation. How do you form or how do you facilitate relationships that are actually supportive? And that doesn't necessarily mean just with parents. That means like especially with friends with the time that we live in now. It's called MVM. It stands for Movement, Voice, Muse. Yeah. So we go over exercises that for lifelong support of deep lower core, which includes your pelvic floor. And I get all of that other stuff. And I also work one-on-one with adolescents in more of like a private coaching type of thing, where we can just chat. Like I went climbing with one of my clients. And we chat about like what's going on and or if they're wanting to work on more of like the physical aspects, we do that. But oftentimes it includes a little mix of both because you can't, yeah. So that's kind of like, they have a very special place in my heart. I'll say that.
Well, and that's so empowering to them.
Yeah. Just because, it's one of those things your mom is probably for a lot of them, not for everybody, but one of the females that's closest to you, but it might just be like physically closest to you, and even the best relationships, mom-daughter, there's still some things that maybe need to be talked about, not with your mom. It's
sometimes easier to talk to another person who might not have the judgment. Yeah, and that's okay. And we have and just knowing that that's okay, giving them permission. Now, of course, if there's something dangerous that's being talked about, that's a totally different situation. But sometimes we just need a fresh set of ears. So that's something that that's been kind of picking up recently. Yeah. Okay, so you can find me on Instagram. My handle is @AshleyDPT. I'm on Facebook as Ashley Zimmerman PT, DPT, and all of this will be on there. My website is
FemiNinjaProject.com. And that's that.
Well,
yeah.
Okay, so I do want to reiterate that if you enjoyed listening to Ashley, and who wouldn't, there is that episode number 34, which is Discover Your Strength Within, and she does an amazing job explaining the structure and the function of the pelvic floor muscles. It's probably the best explanation I've ever heard, and I've really gone into the pelvic floor for reasons of my own. And episode number 35, which is the Body Freedom Project, and that's something you do not want to miss. So before we wrap things up completely, last time you were here, I presented you with a white belt.
Yes, and I cried the whole way home.
You cried the whole way home. Well, we might have to send you home with a box of tissues, because I have another one for you. I have a yellow belt, because the white belt represents a new life, and the yellow belt represents the sun is shining on the little sprouts, and it's starting to grow and develop. So, girl, you have just totally earned your yellow belt. You are amazing. So
awesome.
Oh, I'm just so impressed with everything that you do for women, and really helping them find their personal power and returning their human dignity to them. So that's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Here you go. You got your yellow belt. So
thank you.
Everybody connect with Ashley. Check out her website. This is the most amazing person I have ever met. And make sure that you kind of slow down a little bit. Educate yourself on what's going on, how you're feeling, how you're moving. And that is the way of the FemiNinja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.